Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a really powerful and often totally invisible system that pretty much governs how we interact with each other, how we see value, and even desire. We're going deep, right into the mechanics of emotional scarcity. It's a system that explains why, in the world of social dynamics, less can so often be more. Let's get into it. Just let that sink in for a second. It feels kind of backward, right? It goes against all our instincts for being generous and connecting with people. I mean, we think that giving more, being around more, showing more interest, that should build stronger bonds. But this quote, it points to a fundamental tripwire in our biology, a hidden switch that can flip genuine kindness into what looks like neediness and turn your constant presence into, well, being completely invisible. So here's our game plan. We're gonna map this whole system out. First, we'll explore that core paradox of availability and this thing called the value sink that it creates. Then we're going to pop the hood on the scarcity engine to really see how it works, look at the deep psychology of why it's so powerful, and then finally give you a practical toolkit to take back control of your own value. Okay, so let's start with the big one, the availability paradox. This is where really good intentions can just lead to, well, disaster, socially speaking. You know that impulse to be helpful, to be responsive, to be always there for someone, a coworker, a friend, whoever. It feels like you're building loyalty, right? Building trust. But what might actually be happening is that you're training them on a deep subconscious level to devalue you and just take everything you do for granted. Now, this isn't about being cynical or mean. It's about understanding this hidden operating system that's always running in the background of our social lives. The human brain is, at its core, an energy-saving machine. So when a resource, whether it's info, food, or another person's attention, is just always infinitely available, the brain saves energy by just filtering it out. It becomes predictable background noise, like the hum of your fridge. And that is the first crucial step toward becoming invisible. And that leads us straight into what it actually feels like to live this paradox, the value sink. This is that frustrating, draining feeling when you realize your efforts just aren't being matched, or maybe not even noticed. It's that pattern where the more you give, the less you seem to get back. It's like you're pouring water into a bucket with a giant hole in it. You're just depleting all your energy, but the water level never, ever rises. This spiral leads to something the source material calls affective exhaustion, and you can see the symptoms right here. First, you notice the appreciation just kind of fades away. The thank yous get real rare. Then, your efforts become unbalanced. You're giving 100%, and they're giving whatever's convenient. That's called an asymmetric supply. Pretty soon, you're overfunctioning. Staying late, always being the one to reach out, just becomes the new normal, the expected baseline. And eventually, this can lead straight to decision paralysis, that awful feeling of being mentally fried and trapped with no idea how to change the very dynamic you accidentally create. So the whole thing really boils down to this: the difference between being a utility and a priority. Think about it. A utility, like your Wi-Fi or running water, it's essential, but you only ever notice it when it's gone. It's predictable, it's always there, and so it's taken for granted. Its perceived value is low. But a priority? That's something that's actively sought after. It's like front row tickets to a sold-out concert. Its availability is a variable, not a guarantee, and because of that, its perceived value is just exponentially higher. The goal is to be valued, not just used. And the end result of this value sink is something called the erosion of executive sovereignty. This phrase just perfectly captures the trap. In your effort to be liked, to be included, you've accidentally given up your own power, your own agency to choose, just for a seat at the table. But the deep irony is, once you're there, your constant availability signals to everyone else that you've got nowhere else to be. You've traded your freedom for a seat in a prison that you built yourself. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now let's get tactical and break down the engine that actually powers this entire dynamic. We're going to reverse engineer this 4-stage process called the Constraint-Calibration Loop. Understanding this machine is the key to seeing how value is systematically built, not by adding more, but through strategic withdrawal. Now, the leverage point, the crucial first move in this whole engine, is creating a scarcity barrier. And listen, this isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about setting a healthy, conscious boundary. It's a limit. Maybe you don't answer a text at 10 p.m. Maybe you say no to a last-minute request that totally messes up your schedule. This simple act of self-respect creates a perceived deficit. The other person, who got used to an unlimited supply of your time, now suddenly faces a shortage. And that shortage is exactly what starts the engine.
And that barrier kicks off the whole loop. Let's walk through it. Stage 1, the satiation baseline. You're super available, so they get used to it. Your yes stops being a gift, it becomes an entitlement they just expect. Stage 2, rational rationing. You introduce that scarcity barrier. You pull back your availability, not because you're mad, but as a conscious choice. Now stage 3, the pursuit phase. Their brain detects that deficit. A switch flips, and that dopamine-fueled seeking system in their brain kicks into high gear. They start thinking, whoa, what happened? How do I get that reliable source back? They start chasing the validation they used to get for free. And that leads to the final stage, status recalibration. Because your approval isn't a guarantee anymore, it's now a variable, a prize to be won. And just like that, its status, and by extension your status, has been elevated.
So we've covered the how, but the big question is why? Why is this engine so incredibly effective? Why does this loop have such a powerful grip on us? Well, the answer lies deep in our evolutionary psychology. We're about to explore the reactance reflex, the hardwired biological trigger that makes scarcity an almost irresistible force. This metaphor just nails it. Think about it. For ancestors, a resource that was abundant one day and then disappearing the next, like a watering hole in a drought, that wasn't just some inconvenience, it was a survival threat. It became the single most important thing to secure, period. Our modern brains are still running that exact same urgent primal software. When someone's warmth and availability suddenly becomes scarce, our brain flags it as a critical, disappearing resource, and we feel this primal urge to go get it back. This really shows you the psychological shift. We move from a state of habituation, where you're an abundant supply and just kind of bypassed by the brain's attention filters, to a state of reactance. In this state, you are completely reframed as a disappearing resource, a prize. Your value isn't just reassessed, it's inflated. This is what triggers that powerful neurological seeking system we talked about. The chase is on, and it often completely overrides logic. So let's break down the specific biological triggers that are really at play here. First up, psychological reactance. It's that simple, powerful rule that whenever our freedom to choose is restricted, we want the restricted thing even more. Tell someone not to press the big red button and it's all they can think about. Second, this whole process hijacks our dopamine system. The anticipation of maybe regaining that resource creates this intense, emotional, impulsive override of our rational mind. It becomes all about the wanting, not the having. And third, loss aversion. Our brains are literally wired to feel the pain of a loss twice as strongly as the pleasure of a gain. We become obsessed with getting back the abundant version of the person we lost, convinced that getting them back will make the pain go away. So, now that we get the problem, the machine, and the deep psychology, how do we defend ourselves against it? And more importantly, how do we reclaim our own cognitive sovereignty when we feel ourselves getting pulled into this loop by someone else? Okay, let's move from theory to action with a strategic toolkit called the Utility Audit. There are 3 clear, tactical steps to shut these effects down. First, label the rationing. The second you feel that jolt of panic or that obsessive urge to fix their sudden distance, you have to stop and name it in your own head. This is a scarcity trigger activating my reactance reflex. That simple act of labeling re-engages the logical part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, and it pulls you right out of that emotional dopamine spiral. Second, you conduct the utility audit itself, which we'll get to next. And third, create support redundancy. Don't let one person, one job, or one opportunity be your only source of validation. Build other connections, have other projects, other interests to break their emotional monopoly on your sense of worth. And this is the heart of the audit. You have to ask yourself this brutally honest question. If this person, who is currently being so distant and high value, were suddenly available all the time, texting you constantly, always needing to talk, would you still find them so compelling? Or would the mystique just vanish and, honestly, you'd just be annoyed? This question is a super powerful tool. It forces you to separate their actual real value from the artificial value their scarcity is creating in your mind. It breaks the spell. Now, there's a really important distinction to make here, especially for anyone in a leadership role. This isn't about becoming a ghost or being flaky and unreliable. The ethical way to apply this principle is to practice ethical presence. It means you aren't always available, but when you are available, say in your defined office hours or in a scheduled meeting, you offer high-intensity, undivided focus. Your value comes from the quality of your attention during limited, predictable times, not the sheer quantity of your accessibility. This is what builds respect, not resentment.
Okay, let's bring all this home. Understanding this system isn't a license to go out and manipulate people. It's a map for awareness. It lets us step outside the game, see all the pieces on the board, and make conscious choices.
It allows us to completely reframe the very idea of our availability and, by extension, our own worth. It's really about recognizing the true value of your most finite resource, your time and your attention.
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Stop treating your availability like it's a free gift you just hand out to everyone. Start seeing it as a currency. It has immense value. You can invest it wisely in people and projects that give you a return. You can spend it on things you enjoy, or it can be wasted. And just like any currency, when you flood the market with it, it gets devalued. When you manage it wisely, its value goes.
And at the end of the day, the most powerful tool you have against all of this is just awareness. The moment you can see the constraint-calibration loop happening, the second you can feel that reactance reflex kicking in and you can label it for what it is, the whole system just loses its power over you. You're no longer an unconscious pawn in the game, you're a conscious observer. And from that position, you get back your power to choose how you respond, instead of just reacting. And so we'll end with this powerful thought. Don't be the ever-present, invisible air that's just taken for granted until it's gone. Be the oxygen. Be that vital, high-value resource that is appreciated, that's sought after, and that is consciously valued. By understanding the anatomy of emotional scarcity, you reclaim the power to define your own worth.